Veronica unlocked the heavy oak door. The house stood before her, vast and silent. Dust motes danced in the slivers of fading sunlight. She stepped inside. A chill, not of temperature but of presence, brushed her skin. This place was old. It held secrets in its shadowed corners. She felt them stir as she crossed the threshold. The scent of decay and ancient wood filled her nostrils. Veronica walked slowly through the cavernous rooms. Each footfall echoed unnaturally loud in the oppressive quiet. In the grand living room, a towering fireplace stood cold and empty. Its mantelpiece was thick with undisturbed dust, save for one small, clear spot. Days turned into nights, and the cycle continued relentlessly. Veronica tried to impose her life onto the house, hoping to make it her own. She unpacked her few belongings, placing them carefully around. She cleaned away layers of grime, yet the house resisted her efforts. It clung to its gloom, refusing to let go of its past. The unsettling feeling did not diminish no matter what she did. Instead it grew, coiling around her like an invisible vine, tightening its grip. She began to hear sounds, faint at first. At first they were faint, almost imperceptible. A creak from the floor above when she was downstairs, echoing in the silence. A soft thud from a distant, empty room, breaking the stillness. The old house groaning, she reasoned, trying to calm herself. The sounds became more distinct, less random, more deliberate. She would be reading in the dim light of the study, trying to focus. A soft whisper would drift from the hallway, barely audible, too faint to discern words, but undeniably there, persistent and eerie. Sometimes they seemed to call a name she almost recognized. A name that sounded almost like hers, but not quite, adding to her unease. One evening as twilight bled through the windows she heard them clearly. Footsteps, pacing slowly in the upstairs hallway, echoing through the empty halls. The feeling of being watched intensified, growing stronger with each passing moment. It was a constant pressure at the back of her neck, like an invisible hand pressing down. A prickling awareness that eyes were upon her, watching her every move. Even in the brightest room, even with her back to a solid wall. She would turn suddenly, expecting to see someone, something. But there was never anyone there, but there was never anything. Only the empty spaces. The silence was deafening, only the shadows that seemed to deepen when she wasn't looking, growing darker and more menacing. Objects, too, seemed to shift, moving ever so slightly when she wasn't paying attention. A book left on the table would be found on the floor, as if it had been pushed. A teacup placed by the sink would appear on the mantelpiece. Small, insignificant changes that made her question reality. She started to doubt her own memory. Was she losing her mind? Was she becoming forgetful? The isolation, perhaps. The loneliness was taking its toll. The stress of the old, creaking house. Every sound seemed amplified, but the sense of an external presence was too strong, too persistent. It was always there. It was a cold intelligence, watching, waiting, observing her every move, calculating. Sometimes in her peripheral vision she would catch a fleeting movement, a shadow darting away, a darker patch in the shadows, a presence lurking just out of sight, a subtle ripple in the air like heat rising from a non-existent flame, an illusion, perhaps. When she turned to look directly, it was gone, always gone, leaving her in a state of constant unease, leaving her questioning her sanity. Was it all in her head, or was something truly there? Driven by a desperate need for answers, Veronica began to search. She scoured the local library for records of the house, for stories of its past inhabitants. The librarian, an elderly woman with knowing eyes, offered little. Some houses hold on to their stories tightly, she had said. They don't like to share. But Veronica persisted. She found old newspaper clippings, faded, brittle. They spoke of a family who had lived there generations ago, the Holloways. There were whispers of tragedy, of a disappearance, a child. In a dusty antique shop in the nearby town she found it, tucked away in a box of forgotten photographs. A small sepia-toned portrait, a young girl, no older than 10, with large, dark eyes, eyes that seemed to hold an ancient sadness. She wore a lace dress, her hair was neatly parted, there was no name on the photograph. The attic door was in the darkest corner of the upstairs hallway, shrouded in shadows that seemed to dance with every flicker of the dim light. It was small, unassuming, locked, a door that held secrets behind its wooden frame. Veronica had ignored it until now, dismissing it as just another part of the old house. But the girl in the photograph seemed to beckon her towards it, her eyes almost pleading. The whispers seemed to originate from behind that very door, growing louder each night. One afternoon, armed with a rusty key she found in an old desk drawer, she decided to face it. Her heart pounded in her chest. The key turned with a reluctant screech. The door creaked open, revealing darkness within. A wave of frigid air, thick with the smell of dust and something else, something faintly sweet and rotten, washed over her, making her shiver. She ascended the narrow, rickety stairs, each step a test of her resolve. Each step groaned in protest. The attic was vast, an expanse of shadows and silence. Larger than she had imagined, it seemed to stretch on forever. Cobwebs hung like ghostly shrouds, swaying gently in the cold air. Slanted beams of weak light cut through the gloom, illuminating swirling dust particles that danced in the air. Forgotten objects lay scattered everywhere. Broken furniture, piles of old books, trunks sealed shut, guarding their secrets. It was a graveyard of memories, a place where time stood still, a place where the past lay undisturbed, until now. The air was heavy, thick with the weight of forgotten years. The discovery of Lily's diary changed everything. The mystery deepened, but it also became terrifyingly personal. Veronica read late into the night. Lily's words painted a picture of profound loneliness, of a sensitivity that bordered on the supernatural. Lily wrote of seeing things others could not, of hearing voices in the empty rooms, of a shadow that followed her, a shadow that grew darker, more demanding. Veronica felt a chilling kinship with the long-dead child. Their experiences mirrored each other across the chasm of time. The house was the bridge. Sleep became a place of torment. No longer were the dreams formless. Now Lily was in them, not as a threat, but as a frightened child, lost in the shadowy corridors of the house. Veronica would see her, huddled in corners, weeping silently, reaching out a small, pale hand. Veronica would try to go to her. Veronica tried to reach out. She called her sister, tried to explain the whispers, the footsteps, the girl in the photograph. Her sister's voice was filled with concern, but also with disbelief. "You're stressed, Vero," she said. "It's an old house, you need to get out more." But Veronica knew it was more than stress, it was real. The house was real. Lily was real. The isolation deepened. The world outside the house felt distant, unreal, only the chilling presence within its walls felt truly tangible. She was alone with it, utterly alone. The presence in the house grew bolder, more assertive. It was no longer content with subtle whispers and fleeting glimpses. One evening, as she sat reading Lily's diary, the book was snatched from her hands. It flew across the room. Veronica knew where she had to go. The attic, Lily's room, the heart of the sorrow, the source of the darkness. With trembling legs, she climbed the creaking stairs once more. The air grew colder with each step. The silence was heavy, expectant. The entity was waiting. She could feel its cold amusement, its hunger. She pushed open the attic door. The room was darker than before. The weak sunlight barely penetrated the grime on the single window. The small rocking horse stood in the center, rocking slowly. By itself. "Lily," Veronica whispered. Her voice was a fragile thing in the oppressive gloom. The rocking stopped. A small, shimmering figure appeared beside the horse. Lily. Pale. Translucent. The entity lunged, not physically, but with a wave of icy despair. Veronica felt her will begin to crumble. The sorrow of the house, the pain of Alara, the fear of Lily. It threatened to consume her, But then, she saw Lily's small, translucent face. Pleading, hoping. Veronica clung to that image. "You are the shadow," Veronica cried out. "You fed on their unhappiness. You trapped them here." The entity recoiled slightly, as if her words were a physical blow. "They belong to me," it shrieked, its form flickering. Veronica remembered Lily's diary, the love for her mother, the fear of her father, the father who became a monster in his grief and possessiveness after Alara tried to flee his cruelty. He had trapped their spirits, bound them to his own tormented existence within the house. "They are not yours to keep," Veronica shouted. She focused all her will.